The Augusta Canal is one of Augusta's most recognizable landmarks. Many people drive across it or run, walk, and bike beside it every day. In this month's Hometown History, Kim Vickers dives into learning more about its origins and how it saved Augusta. Kim?
Brad, thanks. The Augusta Canal has been part of the Garden City's landscape for nearly 180 years. Since it was built, it was used for water power, transportation, and the city's primary water supply. In fact, it's the only canal in the country still being used for its original purposes.
Well, the whole idea of the canal came about because in the 1840s, the South was very agricultural. And the South was actually going through a bit of an economic depression, including Augusta. A lot of folks were packing up and moving out west during westward expansion.
Because of the economic depression, Augusta was in danger of becoming a ghost town. Julianne Shurtleff is the education program director at the Augusta Canal Discovery Center. She tells me that Henry Cumming, the son of Augusta's first mayor, believed Augusta should stop shipping cotton up north for production. He proposed that Augusta should build a canal to create industry and make textiles locally in order to boost the economy.
He knew that we could have a canal because of the Savannah River and the geography of the land here. We're on the fall line, so the land drops from the Piedmont to the coastal plain here. So if you've been out on the canal, you know it's higher than the river, so the water would drop from the canal, spin turbines in factories, and run machines. It's amazing that they could figure that out in 1845.
Cumming dreamed that Augusta could be like Lowell, Massachusetts, the center of the Industrial Revolution. But first, he needed to rally support.
You look at history books, and back in the 1840s in the South, a lot of Southerners were not open to industrial life. They were still farmers and agricultural. So, you know, it was this Yankee idea, I guess you'd say, that having industry in the South. So he had to gain some support.
Julie Boone is the former education program director at the Discovery Center and currently volunteers there. She tells me that once Cumming secured support, he had to try to figure out how to pay for it.
And how to get the money was a real problem. Of course, the first money came out of Mr. Cummings' own pocket to do this. So, but with the help of investors, it was started and it was built.
Shurtleff adds that local landowners paid for some of it too.
A lot of the land that was part of the original layout of the canal were farms and plantations, and they would pay out of their pocket to help dig that part of the canal.
The Savannah River drops 52 feet over 7 miles through Augusta. The plan was for the canal to be built in 3 levels south of the river through the center of the city.
So the idea was to build the canal to stay at the Piedmont level. So up at the head gates at Savannah Rapids, the canal and the river are level. Then the canal stays higher as the river drops. And as the river drops through town, that water would stay higher and it would drop into mills and spin turbines.
In May of 1845, construction on the canal began. White laborers from the Georgia Railroad started the work, but before long, the summer heat was too much. African Americans, both enslaved and freed, finished up the work.
It was a lot of slave labor. Some few immigrants maybe thrown in here and there, but mostly slave labor, because no one else would sacrifice having to deal with the heat in the summer. We have to kindly acknowledge slave labor dug the canal. At the same time, we still have to remember that we condemn why.
It took 3 years to build all 3 levels of the Augusta Canal. As soon as the first level of the canal was complete, industrial factories began popping up. James Coleman's saw and grist mill began production on the canal in April of 1848. A month later, the Augusta factory began producing textiles. Then, when Georgia seceded from the Union during the Civil War, Colonel George Raines picked Augusta to build a gunpowder factory, all thanks to the canal.
It made over 3 million pounds of gunpowder by the end of the Civil War, the second largest gunpowder factory in the world.
The 28 Confederate Powder Works buildings were the only ones ever constructed by the Confederate government. After the war, the success of the canal and the industry it attracted encouraged local leaders to expand. In 1872, work to widen the canal began. This time, the laborers were made up of Irish and Italian immigrants. Plus, more than 200 Chinese immigrants were hired to work on the project. They brought more efficient digging tools with them.
And with them, they brought modern steam-powered tools and machines. So they were hired, they came to Augusta, the first Chinese immigrants to the city of Augusta. And it's really neat because some Chinese in Augusta now can still trace their lineage back to those original immigrants that came to dig the canal in the 1870s.
It was a big deal when they came to town. We were a little Georgia town, and no one had ever seen anyone from China. And everybody went to the railroad station. And generally speaking, they were very accepted within the town.
With the widening of the canal came more industry. Sibley, Enterprise, and John P. King mills were built along the banks of the canal. The rise of the factories brought more people to Augusta.
And from 1870 to 1890, after the grand enlargement, the city's population went from 15,000 to over 33,000 people. And people moving in, they could work in these factories. It was a job that women could have and make money. Children would work in the factories and help their family. You would have a company-owned house that you would rent from the company you worked for that was already built. And you kind of had a little mill life.
As industry continued to flourish, tourism made its way to Augusta.
So the Georgia coast and where we are, this was about as far south as people traveled in the winter. So we became a winter resort with big hotels and big golf courses. And you know where that led to? It led, of course, to the building of Augusta National. Bobby Jones came here as a tourist and played a little golf and liked it.
In 2003, the Augusta Canal Discovery Center opened in a newly revitalized Enterprise Mill. It houses a museum exhibit reminding people of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the canal's construction and what mill life was like. People can also enjoy boat tours to learn more.
Our big boats are electric as well. They've got batteries on them that are charged up at the dock with hydropower generated right here in the Enterprise Mill. So the canal boats actually run on canal power.
Both Shurtleff and Boone say they're fascinated by the history of the Augusta Canal and love sharing it with others.
You're constantly learning. People have questions. The best thing, the sense of community with the overall Augusta community and the tight-knit sense of community within the canal organization.
The history, I mean, I can just get all giddy like talking about the stories of the canal, and me and some of our other coworkers that are history people, I mean, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll go on a tangent about one random thing we learned about the canal. We have to figure it out.
Well, there's so much more to learn about the history of the Augusta Canal, including more of those tragedies and resulting ghost stories at WJBF.com. That's just part of your hometown history.